Nintendo is a Japanese gaming company known for being easily the most revolutionary developer in the history of this industry. Now there's a statement you'd be hard-pressed to argue against, and also one that you hear a lot of across the internet, and it's perfectly valid. I mean, who could forget how they saved the industry during the video game crash of 1983, or how they reinvented platforming with Mario, or how they innovated home consoles with the Wii? This is why many people, including myself, have lauded this company and even worshipped it, perhaps to an unhealthy extent. But it's also important to acknowledge when a company, even so revered and well-regarded, does something that's wrong. To me, that came in the form of how Nintendo uses, and frankly abuses, the copyright protection system. If you've been following me for a while, either on Twitter or on Here in the Summer, you'll know I harshly criticized the company for taking down fan-made projects like another Metroid 2 remake and Pokemon Uranium, as well as for falsely copyright claiming my own videos and recently asking the Game Awards to remove AM2R and Pokemon Uranium from the best fan creations list. Of course, I understand that to some extent, copyright holders such as Nintendo are obligated to protect their intellectual properties, or they can risk losing their rights to their trademarks. But let's be honest for just a second. Have you ever read the domestic or international agreements that govern copyright? Are you a lawyer specializing in intellectual property? Do you really care about, much less understand, the full extent of some artificial entity's legal rights and statuses? Unless you're Nintendo's law firm, I highly doubt that. Frankly, when people try to white knight Nintendo by saying their actions are justified in a legalistic sense, it reflects a one-dimensional understanding of this issue and a failure to account for the broader context and significance of Nintendo's actions. Furthermore, it's one thing to take down fan games for copyright reasons, but it takes a new level of arrogance and entitlement to threaten a lawsuit to demand the removal of fan games from an award ceremony. How does giving AM2R or Pokemon Uranium an award affect Nintendo's intellectual property rights? Is an award an attack on the company's pride? It can't just be the overprotection of their IPs. There has to be a reason, right? See, the problem is that Nintendo's approach to copyright and intellectual property, while legally sound, is excessively and unnecessarily adversarial in tone and action towards both the gaming news media and, more importantly, Nintendo's fan base. Fan content and internet reviews function as a creative outlet for Nintendo's fanbase to express and share their admiration and appreciation for the company's characters, stories, gameplay, and lasting legacy. Contrary to Nintendo's public relations, the purpose of making fan content is not to feloniously claim Nintendo's intellectual property as one's own or to rip off the company's profits in any substantial way. Many, if not all of these fan creations are in fact made and distributed free of charge out of a respect for the company's intellectual property. The purpose is to express to the fan community and to Nintendo itself what they love about the company's content and why. By ruthlessly, unapologetically, and systematically cracking down on fan content such as AM2R or Pokemon Uranium, as well as taking down and taking away money from YouTube videos, all in the name of intellectual property protection, Nintendo has not only rebuffed the affection of most of its devoted fans, but also branded them as criminal deviants seeking nothing more than to damage the company financially. Moreover, Nintendo has shown that it is more significantly willing to go after fan content for copyright infringement than to go after other companies which blatantly and intentionally rip off Nintendo's intellectual properties for the express purpose of making a profit. Why? Because these people are more likely to actually take Nintendo to court. Whereas an average Joe Nintendo fan doesn't have the time or money to put up a successful legal defense against a multinational corporation. However justified in a legal sense, Nintendo's actions essentially amount to a bully picking on someone smaller and weaker than them because they know they can get away with it. By failing to distinguish between a fan work made as a tribute from a blatant ripoff like Super Smash Jungle World, Nintendo has flatly disavowed the admiration of its fans and lumped them in with the likes of Asylum Films. This approach is frankly disrespectful to their fanbase and shows that Nintendo only cares about its fans to the extent that they reliably line the company's pockets when a new release comes out. Nintendo has shown that they are only interested in fans enjoying their content in ways they approve, which apparently amounts to simply playing the games and forking over more money when the next one comes out. It's like they're a soulless machine that only cares about profit. And all this led to perhaps one of the most important tweets I've ever fucking written. I like Nintendo as a game developer, just not as a company. I'd like to emphasize that point, because regardless of what I think of Nintendo's business practices, I can't deny that they make some fantastic content. And that leads me into my second point about Nintendo's business practices, their approach to professional video game reviews. As you know, I've been reviewing Nintendo games for the last 2 years or so on my channel, recommending and criticizing new releases as they came out. Over time, I began receiving review copies from random sites that agreed to send me products in exchange for creating reviews, which is basically why the Great Splatoon crisis of 2015 happened in the way it did. It was only after being contacted by an actual rep from Nintendo that I started getting review copies directly from them. See, I was what you would call a Nintendo brand ambassador, which basically means I signed an agreement with Nintendo saying that I would review products that they would send me for free. Sounds like a pretty good gig, right? It is until you look at the fine print, which is that you have to follow this surprisingly detailed, intense code of conduct to be a Nintendo brand ambassador. Of course, a system like this is perfectly reasonable. Nintendo provides review copies or early access to new services for free, and in exchange, the reviewer has to follow the company's terms and conditions. The problem is that the way these documents are written, Nintendo reserves the right to terminate the ambassador agreement at any time and for any reason. While the document does encourage reviewers to be honest and to follow pertinent FTC guidelines for those receiving free products for reviewing purposes, Nintendo still retains a significant capacity not only to cherry-pick who becomes a Nintendo brand ambassador, but also to eliminate ambassadors from the program for any reason at all. The system is specifically designed to flood the market with reviews and articles stroking Nintendo's cock. Not only because it leaves the company poised to throw out reviewers who say negative things about Nintendo's products, but also because of the psychological response that comes from getting something that's free and special. When you're getting a hot new game from Nintendo early and before all other consumers, that's naturally going to bias your response in some way, whether you're aware of it or not. And no, I'm not advocating that we throw out review copies altogether. What I'm saying is that when you're part of a special program where super friendly Nintendo PR agents give you free review copies of your favorite games and are also eligible for a bunch of gifts, it's going to affect the way you treat the company and its products in your reviews. When I began to put together the pieces of how people would review these games devoid of any critique regarding the flaws and minimal discussion of game mechanics, I made it my personal goal to try to make my reviews of Nintendo games more thorough and engaging, although my critique may have gone overboard at times. As you'd expect, this criticism of Nintendo and their products didn't go over too well, and it all came to a boiling point this past summer. After I made my video taking a public stance against Nintendo's policy on fan content, I noticed a decline in the products I was receiving. I was told I would get the new releases, but sometimes they wouldn't show up, and it would be chalked to overstocking. One of my favorite excuses for sorry. No, we don't want you to have this. Then, other times, I wouldn't get the review copies days before the launch date as I normally had. Instead, I got them the day of, which made it almost impossible to tell consumers whether or not that product was a good value, since the majority of consumers make their purchases based on those first set of reviews. Like I said before, having early access to new games significantly increases your influence as a reviewer. And it's not like I didn't know what was happening and why it was happening. I was just surprised that Nintendo didn't outright tell me that they didn't want me to review their games anymore initially. I signed an agreement that specifically said I would be getting review copies, so I was a little bit confused. Instead, they led me on a 3-week cat and mouse chase by saying my membership was under review until finally telling me I was done being a Nintendo brand ambassador this October. Trust me though, they knew my agreement was terminated the moment I dared to speak out against them. They were kinda just toying with me because I expressed how upset and concerned I was multiple times. This company I had spent 2 years of my life working closely with and essentially promoting just terminated me because they couldn't stomach criticism of their own self-destructive actions. Nintendo was a company I had held in high regard for most of my life. As a kid, I loved their games. For a long time, I wouldn't even touch any console made by another company because I loved and respected Nintendo that much. But this experience has just helped me to see Nintendo's true colors, so to speak. The reason I'm sharing this anecdote is not to whine and elicit sympathy about how Nintendo won't send me review copies anymore. Don't mistake me, Nintendo has every right not to send me review copies, and I'm not entitled to receive them simply because I ask for them. I share this anecdote to show firsthand how Nintendo conceptualizes and approaches video game reviews, to pass on the chilling message they sent to me when they terminated my contract with them. This isn't about me and review copies. This is about how a multinational corporation threw a reviewer out of a prestigious program for being critical of the company's actions. And yes, that's a problem. As a critic, I believe it's my obligation to inform consumers about a product's strengths and shortcomings, and review copies help in this regard by providing those consumers time before to think about their decision. With how fast people consume goods, it's important for a robust system to be in place to protect the consumer and prevent them from getting sucked into a bad purchase or conversely missing out on a good one. By throwing me out of the ambassador program and depriving me of review copies for my critique of the company's actions and cherry-picking critics who give undetailed and largely positive reviews across the board, some who do have large biases, I see that as unethical. Do I regret standing against Nintendo's actions of taking down fan games and willingly disregarding their audience? Not at all. What Nintendo is doing with fan content and YouTube videos is disgusting, and it baffles me that people choose to defend such a soulless, money-hungry machine like this and every single one of their actions. In the past, I've expressed my discontent with such companies as Activision or EA, but following the past 5 months, I think Nintendo may just be the most patently anti-consumer company in the industry today. They've taken a shit on so many beloved gaming franchises, disrespected their fans, manipulated the Game Awards, and on top of all this, still haven't given us a release date for Zelda. I'm only kidding about that last part. I don't actually mean that, I'm sorry. Anyways, I hope you took something away from all this, and maybe you'll start to evaluate companies in a more critical light. If you ask me, it's high time that people take Nintendo off this pedestal and start to think about them like EA or Activision. And no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop reviewing Nintendo games, even if they start to copyright claim all my videos or whatever. I feel like I should still tell you how Nintendo games are regardless of my relationship with the company itself. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to become an anti-Nintendo channel by any means whatsoever. I'm still going to review Nintendo games fairly. When they do something right, something ethically right, I will give them the credit they deserve. If they do something wrong, I will call them out on it. If they make a good game, I'll tell you to buy the game. If they make a bad game, I'll tell you not to buy the game, as I've always had. Hopefully you'll stick around for that, and thank you so much for watching and take care. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye.